Hey, what's up, you guys? So, I recently stumbled across this article titled, "What if we let our kids eat what they want? A radical new take on the weight debate." And I was just like, listen, I need to react to this, and I need to react to this now. So, yeah, hi, I'm Epicharismatic. Skip the intro for a bit just because I just had to hop on here and talk about this article. I haven't read it yet. I just want to react to it with you guys and definitely hear your guys' opinion of it. But, anyways, let's just dive right into it. Fat. Okay, we get it. Donuts make you fat. All right. Modern parenting is preoccupied by the idea of perfection, and that includes weight. Virginia Sole-Smith, author of a brave and radical new book, talks to Rebecca Seal about why our worth shouldn't be measured by size. Okay, I agree so far. I just want to say that. All right. After reading the last page of Fat Talk, Coming of Age and Diet Culture, I cried. Virginia Sole-Smith's book made me radically question my own beliefs about fatness, health, and diet. If you have a child, were a child, or know a child, and think even a little bit about what our culture tells us about good or bad bodies, then this book will turn everything you thought you knew about how to raise a healthy child upside down. Convinced that it's awful to be fat, but we don't interrogate what anti-fatness does to kids. It's not that their bodies cause kids to have higher rates of anxiety, depression, disordered eating behaviors. The real danger to a child in a larger body is how we treat them for having that body. I 100% agree with this paragraph. 100% agree. And it's funny. I do make videos that are sort of not anti-fat acceptance, but just more so I do think that the body positivity movement takes things too far sometimes. And so I like to joke around. I like to make fun, I like play a bit about that. I like to joke a bit about that, but I will say that I don't think that they're wrong about everything. I don't think they're wrong about everything. I definitely agree with them on some takes, and this take right here is a huge one that I totally agree with. 100%. I mean, I've seen people on TikTok and other social media sites talk about, like, man, to be 8 years old again and not have any awareness of what a calorie is. Like, just that, like, freedom almost in terms of, like, you used to just view food as food and not view it as bad, good, unhealthy, healthy, high calorie, low calorie. You know what I mean? And it is psychologically unhealthy to care too much about calorie content and macro content and all this stuff. So yeah. And also, yeah, of course, before we knew what calories were, before we knew what junk food was versus healthy food, we weren't caring about what food did to our bodies and what size we ended up. Like, we didn't care. We were just living our lives as children. So I definitely agree that kids with higher rates of anxiety, depression, and disordered eating behaviors who are heavier set, let's say, 100%, it's not just purely because they're heavier. It's because of how they get treated for being heavier. 100%. Totally agree with that. And even if we want these kids to be healthier physically, we shouldn't do it in a way where we're basically damaging them psychologically. I think there's a way to be healthy physically and psychologically instead of choosing one or the other. So, yeah, no, I totally agree with this. Sole-Smith started looking at the relationship between food, weight, and health when her daughter had to be placed on a feeding tube until she was 2. Oh, that's sad. She developed a food aversion after major heart surgery when she was just a week old, an experience which led to Sole-Smith's first book about kids and food, The Eating Instinct, in 2018. Our pervasive anti-fat attitude and relentless pursuit of thinness have created systemic biases, however well-intentioned, which harm people who happen to live in bigger bodies far more than any body size ever could, and which are especially dangerous for children. I agree, because even the heaviest children, for the most part, they don't tend to be so heavy that they can't come back from it. So I do think, like, in childhood, the psychological damage that's done with diet culture and all of this that this article is criticizing, I do think that damages kids more than the physical damage of being heavy. Does that make sense? I do agree with that. The problem is, though, and this is what I think body positivity tends to do too much, is it's not good to swing the pendulum all the way on the other end and be like, you could just eat anything that you want all the time and there's zero consequences to it. Like, if you happen to be 300 pounds at 5 feet, like, you're meant to be 300 pounds at 5 feet. Like, no, I don't agree with that. But I do agree with the idea that harping on kids losing weight too much and, like, in the way that people do it, where they kind of shame the kid and make them feel that they're wrong for being the size that they are and that their value is less, I do think that the psychological damage hurts them more than the physical damage, for sure. Because usually physical damage also doesn't really hit you until you're older anyway. And even if they're heavy from childhood, like, they probably can make it to their 20s and still have their health intact. And by the time they're a bit older, it'll be easier for them to work on it on their own than when they're children. So, like, I agree and disagree. Like, I 100% agree that the way parents and other adults talk about children's weight is psychologically damaging. I do agree with that. But how we mitigate that and still have them on the right path towards physical health, I think that's the big question. And I think that's the big area that people really don't know where to actually begin with that, because we haven't really gotten there yet. But yeah, no, I agree with this article so far. I'm scared that they're going to go in the extreme, especially as evidenced by the title. But we'll see. We'll see. We have lots of research showing that high body weight correlates with poor health outcomes, but we don't have good evidence that body size itself causes poor health outcomes. Okay, I'm following. Weight and health outcomes might both be influenced by underlying issues or root causes, experiencing poverty, food insecurity, or oppression, for example. Sometimes a health issue increases weight, but that doesn't mean weight loss will fix anything. Body size is just a symptom. Yeah, I think that's more so referring to any sort of psychological issues, right? So depression and binge eating disorder, you will tend to, well, depends on the type of depression you have, but in those cases, you would have somebody who's heavier set. And the reason is the psychological issue. It's not like a physiological issue. So yeah, it depends. Experiencing stigma and shaming leads to intense physiological stress responses, actually triggering some of the health consequences experienced by people in larger bodies. I feel like it's better to just say, like, heavier people than people in larger bodies. I feel like it's too much work. And I don't... Okay, now that just makes me sound lazy, but I just think, like, it makes heavier people, bigger people, overweight people, it makes them sound weird by saying people in larger bodies. It makes them sound like they're not normal. And isn't part of the movement to, like, normalize it in the sense that, like, the same way that you view somebody as an average weight is normal, and somebody who's thin, somebody who's fat should also be normal. Like, I agree with that. But then when you start saying, like, people in larger bodies, people in slimmer bodies, like, just say slim person, heavy person. And no, it's not a value judgment on who they are as a person. It's just describing somebody, you know what I mean? You don't say, like, a person living in a white body. You just say a white person, you know what I mean? You just say things in a way that's not meant to attack somebody else and just describe people, and I think it could work. I'm being nitpicky here. It's not really, this is just a critique I have about this kind of trend that I see in general, not, like, having anything to do with this article specifically. Repeatedly experiencing high amounts of the stress hormone cortisol, for instance, can in itself lead to high blood pressure and result in weight gain. Yeah, so they're saying, like, so this is, like, situational for sure. So the stress causes you to produce a certain hormone that causes you to gain weight. Yeah. And that would be due to an environmental issue that has nothing to do with food. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, weight gain is caused by increased calorie consumption and decreased calorie exertion, you know? So at the end of the day, it is about how many calories you're getting in, but I mean, I don't disagree with this. I don't disagree with this concept, if that makes sense. Like, that stress can make you feel hungry. Even if your body doesn't need that many calories, it'll make your body feel like it does. So it's like, I have understanding for this, and I agree, you know? Define biased. So here it says that this many percentages of doctors, nurses, and dietitians have biased attitudes towards people who are obese. What do they mean by bias? I assume biased as in they're biased against anybody who's obese. But what does that mean? Like, their biased attitudes is saying this is all in your control. This is an issue of self-discipline. This has nothing to do with mental health. This has nothing to do with socioeconomic status. Like, what is the bias? What are the biases exactly? I am curious about what that review specifically looked for when it came to biases in medical professionals. The strongest predictors for weight gain in children are weight teasing and being put on a diet. I will say this. I have seen so many people on social media say that they'll currently be overweight or obese, and they're like, I did every diet. Like, I've been on diets as a kid, and obviously it didn't work. So yeah, I mean, and weight teasing too. Oh my god, do you know how many people gain weight because they eat for comfort? Do you know how common that is? There's people who are a healthy weight that still kind of eat for comfort. They just don't do it as much as other people. Like, it's a thing to eat for comfort. So it's like, to think that engaging in weight teasing is gonna help this person lose weight is so beyond me. Like, that does happen sometimes, but I do think the majority of the time it doesn't work, and it has the opposite effect, dude. It has the opposite effect. You just want to be mean to somebody, and you just want to bully. I don't like that. I don't like that. Yeah, and strong predictors for eating disorders. Yep, yeah. Being told you're too fat in childhood is associated with a higher likelihood of an obese BMI later in life. And again, it's most likely because people see that you're overweight, and they essentially bully you into having some sort of mental health issue, and then you carry that with you the rest of your life, you know? And that might not be all the cases, but it is a lot of the cases from what I've heard. Interesting. So back in 2012, apparently people couldn't believe that trying to lose weight, let alone feeling bad about your weight, would result in people weighing more. Yeah, again, it has to do with like, that's why like I have a video about like ways that I tried that have worked for me losing weight, no exercise. And one of the things I said is that you have to go into it with a healthy mindset, and you have to come from a place of self-love and not self-hate, and you have to really accept that you are heavier and accept like what led you there. And when I say accept, I don't mean passively. I just mean like, just view within yourself, like, it's okay that you ate more. Like, it's understandable why you have this period of time in your life where you were eating too much. That's okay. That makes you human. But now it's time to kind of go in the opposite direction. Not extremely, but to go in the opposite direction so that you can have the body that you want, you know what I mean? And to have the lifestyle that you want. And to come at it from a place of self-love instead of self-shame. I think that's very important so that you can actually lose weight and maintain that weight loss. And again, so many people are heavy because they eat for comfort. So if you make them feel bad, they're gonna go to the thing that comforts them, and that is eating, and then that makes them heavier. Like, people need to understand that. And I do think people are starting to get it, but it's crazy that people will like, they'll engage in behaviors that'll cause that person to be bigger and bigger, and they're like, why are you so big? It's like, dude. Anyways. Real question for anybody who's listening. But I always thought that anorexia nervosa was when you're under a certain BMI and you're really restricting. But if you restrict, but not to the point where you're an unhealthy BMI, but it's still like in a disordered eating kind of way, I always thought that that would be then bulimia. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because I know bulimia has to do with like binge and purge, right? So you eat a lot, but then you go through periods where you somehow purge. Whereas anorexia is just more restrictive. I apologize for not giving a trigger warning. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll put something up on the screen if I'm able to, but I always thought that bulimia is essentially you're more in a healthy weight range, whereas anorexia, you're in a much lower weight range than what's healthy physically. And both are unhealthy for your psychology, obviously, but because I'm reading here and it's saying like atypical anorexia nervosa, where they're not underweight. But then it's like, isn't that just bulimia? And not just bulimia, like it's not as bad. I just mean like there's already a categorization for it. But uh, again, I'm not fighting or anything. I'm just trying to make everything make sense, and keep my facts straight. I'm not saying extreme obesity isn't a problem, but malnutrition will kill you quicker. Restrictive eating disorders kill more kids than diabetes or cancer. Okay, I have to say, I could totally believe this because, again, like, it takes a long time for your body to develop diabetes and cancer, And like heart disease and all these other issues that we associate with being obese, like, it takes a long time. The human body can handle a lot. So kids, like, they've only been around a few years, So I can see kids being heavy, overweight, and like their blood work is totally fine. They're totally healthy. I see this a lot from body positivity activists too on social media where they're like, I'm obese and I'm perfectly fine, but they're in their 20s, That's not when it hits. You know what I mean? But eating disorders and other mental health issues can and do absolutely hit when you're young, when you're a child, when you're a teenager. That happens all the time, and if anything, those rates are increasing as time goes on. So yeah, this is true. This is definitely true. I can understand how this statement would be true, that a restrictive eating disorder would kill more kids than diabetes or cancer. So maybe you shouldn't harm their mental health so soon in life. And I don't know what the real solution is, but I agree. I agree with this statement. I agree that we're hurting more than we're helping those kids. For sure. For sure. No, yeah, no, I already know, like, eating disorders, it's really bad in teenagers and probably younger kids too. I'm aware. Obesity equals death narrative is wildly irresponsible. So I'm not disagreeing so far with this article. I mean, I thought the title was really extreme. It's almost clickbaity, but I agree. I totally agree with this. Am I saying that you should be obese your entire life? No. But am I saying that most likely you will be fine if you're obese for some period of your life and eventually you lose some of that weight? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But if you're growing up and you're a child, and you know how sensitive children can be, and people are basically just making you to feel like you're worthless and making you feel like you want to crawl out of your skin because when you look at yourself, you're just so big. It's gonna cause these health issues. It's gonna make you depressed. It's gonna make you anxious. It's gonna make you have disordered eating issues. So, and yeah, like when your eating disorder is really bad, it does kill. It absolutely does. So, I agree with this so far again. America with please do your research. Okay, yeah, she gets a lot of hate for saying these things. I think a big issue is people they really go extreme. It's like either just like be obese for your whole life or you gotta be as skinny as possible. And it's like people don't, they don't understand that there's just so many factors involved and that you really should aim for moderation and being average and all this. But, what can I do? The health teachers, okay. Yeah, I agree. There's an anti-fat bias that is really, really harmful to people. Absolutely. Like the anti-fat bias, it does in many cases work against the people who want to stop people from being fat. You get what I'm saying? Like I said, it's like people will bully somebody for being fat, but that person's fat partially because they like to comfort eat, and now you made them feel bad, so they're gonna go eat so that they can feel comforted. You know, it's like, that's not helping, you know? I don't know if the childhood obesity epidemic is a myth necessarily. I mean, people are getting heavier and heavier, at least in the US. BMI. I don't like this idea that, like, I don't like this idea that the BMI isn't accurate, because I feel like you'll know when it's not accurate by seeing somebody. So you can see if somebody has a lot of excess fat or a lot of excess muscle, you know, and you can tell, like, okay, well, they're overweight, but a lot of it's muscle, you know, so it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's accurate enough. But that's just my opinion. Okay, this is true. Like, women need more body fat than men. And I guess, like, yeah, BMI only measures weight, full weight, doesn't take into account body composition. But again, you can see it. You can see how much body fat somebody has. But you're right, like, we need a certain amount of body fat, and who is the doctor to say that this is too much just by looking at you? You should measure it and have some kind of number with it. I do see that side of it, you know? Yeah, maybe we should just have a part of your physical where you just, like, get your body fat percentage measured, just so you're like, okay, you're in a healthy range for your age. I actually think that would be the solution to this BMI problem. And I know a lot of people wouldn't like that, but I mean, listen, you need the information, you know? Especially as an adult. I mean, I guess when you're a kid or a teenager, it's harder to handle. And it's understandable why you wouldn't want to think about it then. But as an adult, like, you need to. I do think you should take control over your health, you know? I see. This is where I disagree with this author. This is where I disagree. It is true that weight is purely energy in versus energy out. It's the law of thermodynamics. Calories is our form of energy in the human body, and if you're taking in more calories than you're burning off, than you're using, you're gonna gain weight, you're gonna get bigger. You're gonna hold on to that because it needs to go somewhere. It's either gonna go outside of your body or it's gonna stay inside of your body. So, this I disagree with. What I agree with is this idea that, like, stress is a really big factor in weight for a lot of people. I do agree with that. A lot of people gain weight because of stress. A lot of people gain weight because of socioeconomic factors. I do agree that environment plays a huge role, no pun intended, a huge role in people's weight. But to say that it has nothing to do with calories in, calories out is a lie. The fundamental mechanism is calories in, calories out, but how, like, what controls calories in, calories out is the difficult numerous factors that come into play that I just mentioned. So it's like, I disagree with this claim right here, but I agree that it's more complicated than that in actuality. Like, when it comes to practice, when it comes to your day-to-day life, there are more factors involved. I do agree in that sense. I don't like this claim right here also. I feel like it's very discouraging and negative to say that safe, sustainable weight loss is out of reach for most people. It might be, but I don't think it should be said in a way for someone to be like, oh, well, then I might as well just give up. Because I do think a lot of people can lose weight sustainably and safely and maintain it. It just really takes a lot of inner work, and it takes you really devoting the energy and time to it. and eventually it becomes automatic, and that's why I say that it is sustainable, because you can never put a ton of effort into something for the rest of your life. You know, it's supposed to be that it gets difficult in the beginning, but eventually you get used to it. So I do think that that's possible, and I don't like, because of that, I don't like when people say things like, oh, 95% of diets don't work and all this stuff. And I agree, dieting, like short-term dieting where you couldn't do that the rest of your life, that doesn't work. But to say that you can, like most people could never sustainably lose weight, I don't like that. I don't know. I feel like it's a little negative and discouraging for people who want to try, you know? The willpower myth has been disproven in the literature. Yeah, not willpower. It's discipline, and it's really getting to the root of your weight issue is the real solution to it, not just pure willpower. Yeah, this is true. Also, weight loss drugs are developed because, like, we live in a nation where everything is kind of fast paced and everything is like, we neglect a lot of things. So, for example, we're working like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? Not enough time to cook, not enough time to exercise enough, not enough time for a lot of things. So, you kind of do have to shortcut stuff. That's why people eat fast food. It's fast, right? So, I view weight loss drugs as like in that category of just making everything fast and convenient because we're too busy working all the time. And that's like a bigger societal issue beyond just like individuals eating too much, you know? It's like, why is our culture and our work culture specifically set up in such a way that like we have to neglect ourselves and our own health, you know? But that's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other video if you guys want it. Oh, this is rude. Okay, fatty, just go to the gym. Why don't you try harder? I don't know about you, but going to the gym does not help me be slimmer. If anything, it makes my appetite a lot bigger and it makes me eat more. I do better just walking as my exercise than like straight up going to the gym, but that's me. It's fascinating that the idea is so deeply embedded in us that my body is my responsibility and so it's my fault. It is your responsibility, I agree there. But I guess I would say it's like partially your fault. Some of it's your fault. I can't say all of it is your fault because of the factors I just mentioned with work culture and scheduling and the way America is built and designed. Like I agree, it's not all your fault, but you have control over it, some control over it. So it's at least partially your fault, in my opinion. We accept that it's possible for a person who eats a lot can be thin, but we don't accept the inverse because they don't eat as much as they think they do. That's what's going on. They don't eat as much as anyone thinks they do, them or us. So that's why. Where's the part of this article where it says like the kids eating whatever they want? I feel like it's taking so long to get to that part. Um, so this paragraph is talking about highly processed foods like Oreos and talking about how there's people who just like can't have those things in the house or they'll eat all of it. And she's just saying like you shouldn't be like that. You should be able to just have it in the house and not eat all of it in one sitting. It's like okay, maybe you don't have that problem, but many people do. I mean, even myself, I don't always have that issue, but I have that issue a lot myself even. So like I get it. But like what's your solution? I don't understand. I think some people, I've heard of this term before where they have like trigger foods and that's where it's like they just refuse to have it in the house because they really will just eat all of it. Like I think it's okay to acknowledge that you have that and to just not have it in the house because they're not foods that you need in your diet anyway for health. You know what I mean? So I don't really see much harm in having foods where you just have to completely restrict it like that. But that's just my opinion, you know? And I can tell you, nobody's out of control around these foods in my house. Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Not everybody, not everybody has it as easy as you. You're the one who just complained about how people say, oh, it's just easy, just lose weight. You know what I mean? Just go to the gym. And now you're saying, oh, it's just easy, just like have the snacks in your cupboard, just don't eat it all. Like It's easy for you to say when you don't have that issue, right? But for people who have that issue, they can't do that, you know? Yeah. A little hypocritical, but not nothing. I'm not slamming. This is not a slam dunk against her. I'm just saying. Yeah, yeah. But like for example, some parents would be like, "Oh yeah," like if weight wasn't in the picture, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, eat all the snacks that you want," but like snacks are really unhealthy for you, even if you didn't gain weight from it. You know? I. Yeah. Maybe part of anti-fat bias is pro-health in a way, where it's like that negative emotion that you feel towards fatness is there so that you don't overindulge. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know it gets to a toxic place, so I'm not saying that we should just stay the way we are, but I'm just throwing something out there. See, okay, she's mentioning something that I agree with. To better regulate the food industry, deal with structural inequality, and our long hours, low pay, always on hustle cultures to make so many people feel too busy or stressed to eat well. 100% that should be navigated. 100% that should be addressed. 100%. That's why we have the statistics on body weight that we have in this country. 100%. Because we always talk about how a certain number of years ago, this many people weren't obese, like, or overweight, percentage wise. So I definitely agree with this 100%. Yeah, I agree with this. But you shouldn't act like there's a limit to how heavy someone can be for that to be like natural for them. And once you get beyond that, that's where you're kind of like overweight, you are eating a little too much. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think kids should be taught that every single weight is not normal, but every single weight is perfectly fine to be at health wise, you know? It's a touchy subject for sure. Ooh, okay. She advocates for trusting children to choose what they eat, allowing them to live by their likes and dislikes, to choose when they've had enough, and to say no when they want to, so that they learn to know themselves and their bodies. Listen, some children, like I once was, are picky and will not eat anything, or they will not eat anything that's good for them. You can't just let kids eat whatever they want whenever they want. Like, they gotta eat something that's healthy. They gotta eat enough for their body. And then the rest they can have flexibility with the rest, but you can't just have kids eating whatever they want whenever they want. Like they're not, 9 times out of 10 they're not gonna eat right if you do that, you know? Yeah, look at this. Who believes their children would live on Haribo if given the chance? We can make fat into just another body descriptor. I agree with that. And we can make fat good. I kind of slightly disagree with that. It depends on the definition of fat. So I do disagree that, like, if somebody's a healthy weight and somebody's calling them fat, that's kind of wrong. I do think somebody being considered fat would have to be at a certain weight level, if that makes sense, and in a weight range that makes sense for that. Um, and once it's too much, you can't really say it's good, you know? And I'm not saying, like, shame them, but I am saying it's like, okay, when somebody has any sort of other health condition, a lot of different health conditions people don't really feel much shame about, right? It's like, oh, I have this thing, I gotta work on it. You know what I mean? I think what would be really psychologically healthy is if physical health was viewed with that same kind of lens, you know? So it's like, oh yeah, I'm overweight, I have to work on it. And just having this attitude that it's like a condition you have. You know what I mean? Like any other condition you could possibly have where you just have to, take certain pills for, change your lifestyle for. It should be more like that without the emotional pain that's associated with being overweight. That's what I think. We have no reason to keep pursuing thinness at any cost. I agree with that. Can't stop judging how our kids' bodies grow. Again, everything within moderation, I agree with. Like within reason, you know? We can reject the premise that our worth should be measured by our weight. Agree with that. What also made me cry was the idea that rather than fixating on how we perfectly, I might be able to make them feel safe inside their own skin. Yeah, and I agree with not being perfect with it, but you can't be extreme where they could eat literally whatever they want. Um, yeah. I'll say this article, I agreed with probably like at least 95% of it, if not more. I just think none of this should be taken to an extreme. That's what I think. I think some kids really, if you let them go to an extreme, they will go way too extreme. You need to have some sort of rules about like healthy meals or healthy food items, like having some vegetables in there, having some fruit and stuff like that. They definitely need to be eating, like at least a little bit, you know? And there does have to be some limitation on junk, but not in a way where you're shaming them, not in a way where it's like, you're gonna finish all of this or you're gonna get fat. It's just more of like, you only need a certain amount. Like if you frame it in that kind of healthy way, where it's like, the same way you only need a certain amount of healthy food, you only need a certain amount of junk food. You know what I mean? When you view it like that and teach it to them like that, then they won't feel shame towards themselves and their bodies. They'll just understand that, oh, there's limits to things, just like there's limits to everything. I mean, you don't let your kids watch TV 24/7, right? Or if you do, you realize how bad it is when they do that, right? Because they just like, their eyes are just glued to it. They don't do the other things they need to do. And they need to learn moderation, you know? So I think this article made a lot of great points, but my only real critique is to just not take anything to an extreme. That's what I think. So you know what? I am pleasantly surprised by this article. I thought I was gonna sit here and just roast it and be like, oh my god, this person's gonna say some crazy things, like let kids eat whatever they want, whenever they want. And they did kind of say it, but the way they said it was more so like, just don't be a helicopter parent, you know? Or somebody who's just hovering over them and just like, don't eat this, eat that. It's just more of them saying it in that kind of way. So it's like, okay, I see it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this article and just this topic in general. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on it.